When it comes to bass fishing, what's on your boat's deck can make all the difference. Every bait tells a story and every setup has a purpose, and I'm breaking it all down. What's on my deck? Let's dive in. Well, it's that time of the month already. We're back with a What's on My Deck. This is February. Before we get going, I just want to say thank you to everybody. We just hit 10,000 subscribers. We jumped up a ton on that first What's on My Deck to start this season. We've been doing it 5 years. Now the content, we're always trying to bring everything to you, bring you the honest truth, try to make you better fishermen, try to make you better outdoorsmen out on the water, and just a big thank you for hitting 10K. Let's keep it going, but we'll get right into it. What's on my deck? This is February. We're just wrapping up February. You're probably watching this, it's going to be early March. And where have I been? Since I left y'all at the end of the January one, I was in Florida. So I had about another week maybe in Florida, caught some nice bass. Everything was awesome there. Big bass, of course. Florida's just chock full of them. There's not a better spot a bass fisherman wants to be in the month of January. So February kicked off in Florida. Then I had my first tournament at Bassmaster Open at Sam Rayburn. Sam Rayburn's a lake I've had success at in the past. This one, I finished 53rd out of 235 to 240 boats. It was a crazy tournament from the start, crazy weather. First day got canceled. We went on day 2. I was in 53rd after the first day, and day 3 was canceled, which we did know ahead of time, again, because of really foul weather. So it was a shoot it out, all you could get, and that's what I could get. Got some stuff that I was using there, definitely caught some big bass at Sam Rayburn. And 53rd, I'm not in love with it. I'm not mad at it either. It's a point race. It's great points to start the season, but I've been doing these tournaments long enough. I want to win them. Definitely a top 10, top 20, something like that. But 53rd, a lot of points. And then we left there, and I got to go to Shields Southern Fishing University at Lake Lanier in Georgia. Central Georgia, just outside Atlanta. One of the best spotted bass lakes in the country. I love going there. It's been a few years since I've been there. And Shields does a great job with this. It's employees that come in, probably roughly 50 different employees from different stores, different branches come out and get an in-depth fishing training from everything from safety to rod and reels, lures, electronics. Garmin was there, Humminbird was there, Lowrance was there, of course Shimano, G Loomis, Z-Man, Sims, you name it. They're there trying to teach the awesome employees and associates at Shields so that they are better educated to teach you all when you come into the stores to buy some of the stuff that I'm preaching now. So how about I shut up and we just get into it. February, we are talking February, pre-spawn almost everywhere. Of course, Florida, there were definitely fish on beds in Florida. I didn't do too much of that myself, so it's not on my deck yet. The next couple months, I'm seeing a lot of bed fishing coming. But February, all pre-spawn, maybe even a little late winter. And I'm kind of doing it a little different. What I'm liking is how I've been fishing lately. It seems like I got, I'm running 9 for you. So 5 power fishing setups, old school style fishing, and maybe 4 finesse, forward sonar type stuff like that. You got to stay in the game. You got to learn how to use forward sonar. So let's jump right into it. First things up, when we're talking about the biscuits and gravy, let's get right into the Carolina rig. You throw them all year long. If Mille Lacs wasn't frozen right now, I'd be throwing a Carolina rig. But pre-spawn in particular, it's awesome. Versatile bait, I can throw it around everywhere, and fish like to stage up on, humps and little points and hard spots, maybe a little bit of foundation stuff, definitely hard bottom, stump fields, and a Carolina rig can pick those big pre-spawners that are staging for the spawn up. My setup is an awesome one. This is the G Loomis GLX 874C CRR, Carolina rig rod, specifically made for that. If you follow my stuff, I don't just use these CRR Carolina rig rod series strictly for Carolina rigging. I like them for anything that I'm dragging on fluorocarbon out deep. But this one is a brand new one back into the GLX line with the new drop, the new GLX series that just came out not too long ago. And I think it was maybe at least 2 series before that they had this rod. I absolutely loved it. I learned how to throw a Carolina rig on that rod, and now it's back. So I'm definitely pumped up. This is 7.3 fast heavy action. So it's meant for I throw everything from about 1/2 ounce to definitely 3/4 and 1 ounce up. I'm using a Shimano Bantam. I'm using an 8-speed. That's the XG. Like I always say, if I'm using the rod to impart the action, which I am, I'm dragging, catching it up, dragging, then I usually want a fast gear ratio reel to help me catch up with the line. My setup on the Bantam, I'm running 20-pound Shimano Mastiff, straight 20. You know, of course, I got my 3/4 ounce or 1 ounce weight here, a little tungsten bead, an owner swivel, down to an owner round bend worm hook. And here I'm just throwing this Z-Man Turbo Cross, and it's an awesome little bait. Sits on there nice, has a lot of action to it, especially when I'm throwing a big heavy weight that'll allow that thing to drag. It's pre-spawn, water temps are still cool but warming, so I don't want to give them a ton of action in the presentation that I'm throwing to them on the Carolina rig. So first one up, the old ball and chain, the Carolina rig. All right, next up, the jerk bait. This one was in my What's on My Deck last month, but it hasn't come off my deck. You can see I'm wearing it out right here. If you want me to get up real close so you can see, we're wearing this thing out. It gets super deep, 6 to 8 feet. This is the Shimano Zimverno jerk bait. It's a 115. It's perfect. It casts a mile. It has jet boost technology in it, which allows this thing, you can hear it, which allows this thing to cast not only as far as any other jerkbait I've ever thrown, but it's extremely accurate, which is awesome on the forward sonar. Same rod I'm using. Again, we're talking pre-spawn, we're talking forward sonar. Of course, we have a jerkbait on the boat. I was using this at Sam Rayburn. I've been using this at Lake Lanier for spotted bass. I was using this in Florida for Florida strains. It's just the time of year to be throwing a jerkbait. I'm using the new G Loomis GLX 822C jerkbait rod. This is one I've talked about a lot now since it came out. It's got the shortened handle, awesome for jerking, doesn't get all up in my bibs, get my pockets in my bibs and catching my armpits and all that kind of stuff, because you're usually throwing a jerkbait when it's cold out. I'm throwing a super sick reel for it. This is the Shimano Mentanium DC. This is the 70 HG, straight 12-pound Shimano Mastiff fluorocarbon, and that is the setup. The Zimverno's awesome. This reel right here casts an absolute mile. One of the best reels that they are making right now in the Shimano lineup. Definitely got to have that jerk bait. Next up, this one's been a fun rod. I don't think I've talked about this before because I didn't actually have one. I had a prototype from when we were first designing and coming out with the GLXs, when Loomis was getting ready and we were, you know, going through them all. And I liked it. Now I know when it comes to pinging a minnow, which is what we're talking about here on this one, you know, I mean, it's evolved a lot. It's a jig and a minnow, essentially. It's been around a long time. But I know the traditional JDM, or the new way of throwing it, a lot of really small, short, lighter rods. And I didn't know how much I liked that. I'm not willing to go as short as I'm hearing some are throwing, but it's kind of a catch-22 for me. I'm either throwing the G Loomis GLX 891S, or in this case, I started throwing the 841. I got a couple of them. They showed up at my house. It's a real light, tip-heavy rod, 7 foot, casts extremely accurate. I feel like it's easier to throw at fish, and I can get a little bit more action out of the baits, so I'm playing with it. The 891 has done me awesome, and I love it. It's a great forward sonar rod. I just think I might like the accuracy of the 7-footer, but either way, the 891, 841, 2 new additions you can only get in the GLX line. Awesome forward sonar rods for stuff like this. So using that, here I'm using a Shimano Twin Power 2500. We've talked about this before, but I usually use 4,000 size reels. Why wouldn't you? They have less twist, they cast further, they have better drags on them, and they pick up line quicker, but that's why. On this one, I don't like it to pick up line that quick. If it's a smallmouth, maybe. Sometimes you can't take it away from them fast enough, or even as I saw on spotted bass at Lake Lanier. But every now and then, largemouth, or you just come up against lethargic spots and smallmouths, and that slow gear ratio helps me to not screw up the presentation once I got the fish's attention by pulling it away too fast. maybe, just maybe, another thing I'm gonna like about this rod is from 7 foot to 7.5, that's 5 less inches. If I go like this, thinking I got bit, then I'm gonna pull it away from that fish. I might be able to save it. So the setup for this though is the twin 2500 twin power, the G Loomis GLX 841. I'm running 10-pound Power Pro SSV2 to a 12-pound Shimano Mastiff fluorocarbon leader. I'm using an 1/8 ounce owner range roller, and this is just a 5-inch Z-Man scented shads. I mean, I've played with a bunch of different minnows. There's some good ones out there. My thing is with the Elastec is, one, I get a lot more bites on one bait. Two, there's times that they are not going to bite it when they're following it, and I decide that I need to kill the bait, and maybe, just maybe, I can get one of them to bite. And I have found that when I'm using a Elastec for that, the bait's gonna fall, essentially it turns into a big Ned rig. So I just found that I get more bites once I kill the bait, and the fish might follow it all the way down and eat it than I would if I'm using a traditional soft plastic, you know, fluke style bait. But that's my setup right there. That's number one. I'm gonna be throwing this a lot, you know, forever now with forward sonar. It's just kind of the way it goes. Next up, let's stick with that one. And you're probably in a second here going to be seeing a clip of a real big bass that I caught 7:15 or something on Sam Rayburn. I needed that bass. It was maybe noon. Yeah, you can see it here. It was an awesome bass, big one. I needed them. I had a few hours left to try to get one more big bite. That just never happened. So 53rd is what we finished. This is what the big one bit. I've been throwing this big scented shads a lot. It's a Z-Man 7-inch scented shads. This is red bone. Gussie back in the day got me on the red bone color as a chatterbait trailer, and I've just kind of stuck with it, and fish like it. It's kind of watermelon ready. You know, definitely got some shadness to it. Again, I'm throwing a 1/8 ounce, 3.5 gram owner range roller hook, 12-pound Shimano Mastiff fluorocarbon leader, 10-pound Power Pro SSV2, again a 2500 twin power, and then the difference is I switched it. I am now using a G Loomis NRX Plus 872S jig worm rod. With these bigger baits, and just the bigger ones, I was using that 7.5 at 892. Again, I'm just trying a little bit shorter rods, and I still like this one. This is what I would consider a mag medium. The 872, I talk about it a lot. If I had one rod, it's my favorite spinning rod ever made, is the 872 NRX Plus. So it's not breaking my feelings to try this one, but at the same time, it's a little bit shorter. It's definitely got some backbone and a little bit faster tip on it. And as you saw in that video, it jacks giant. So it's just a rod I feel real comfortable with. Again, I'm playing with stuff, so I'm just turning this over to you. 892 in the GLX is awesome. I think with the longer rods, and I know a lot of really good bass fishermen right now that prefer them longer 7.5, 7.6, 7.7 rods for this kind of a presentation. So again, just experiment with it. I do definitely think once you're bit, you have a better landing ratio the longer the rod goes. But there it is. This is my setup for the bigger minnow on places like where we were at, Sam Rayburn, or, you know, Florida, or wherever, Tennessee River, Lake Fork, stuff like that. Let's stick with this Nico rigging, nail weighting, whatever you want to call it, has always been a strong suit of mine since I first heard of it coming out, back when Jackal had the Jackal flick shake worms and stuff. It was just a presentation that I've always understood. With forward sonar now, I really understand it. It's actually opened up a whole new world to me, and it's something that I've been working on a lot. In this situation I was catching some at Rayburn on a Nico rig, actually. I don't think I weighed any in the tournament, but in practice I did catch a few on it. Again, just something I try to keep my hand, whether it's a wacky or a Nico, largemouth, smallmouth spots. In this case, we got to Lake Lanier, and they were chewing on this little guy right here. And I kind of want to show you, this is here. First, I'll do the setup, then we'll talk about the bait, because the bait needs a little explanation. This is my favorite wacky or Nico rod made. This is the NRX Plus, G Loomis NRX Plus 842S SJR. That 7-foot medium action. It's perfect. It's accurate for me to throw stuff at them. If you're throwing throwing a little dice or, you know, a wacky Cinco, or in this case, you know, I'm throwing this right here, Z-Man fatties. Honestly, I hadn't used them before. My buddy Jake, when we were down there in Lanier when we were fishing for spots, he kind of tipped me off on this thing to use it, and I did. And it's an awesome bait. The color's perfect for when fish are moving up shallow. I'm using a little Ryugi. This is a #1 Ryugi hook. You can see the little band there. But at the same time, I got to show you, to be able to get the weight into the Elastec, that's where this tool right here comes into play. And this is a rattlesnaker by Z-Man, okay? You can pull this off, and then they actually sell the little weights that go with it. And you just slide the weight in, you push this in, push it down into the plastic. I'll do a video on this too, so you guys can see here coming up, because this is a tool I use a lot anytime I'm nail weighting stuff. You can hear in there, I got rattles. I can take these rattles, put them in there, and that's another thing. I can actually hide into the Elastec. So now I get the buoyancy and all that, and I can still hide in these little tungsten spikes by Z-Man. Fits in there perfect. They have different weights, all that different kind of stuff. So, and again, you can get the little rattles for those too. But a tool that you just have to use, and I'll do a reel or something on how you actually use it. But all right, so I'm running 8-pound Shimano Mastiff fluorocarbon, 10-pound Power Pro SSV2. One of my favorite all-time Shimano spinning reels, the Shimano Xsense 4000. Awesome setup. Again, remember, you need that little tool, because just your traditional nail weights, screw-in type stuff won't work with Z-Man plastic. But that tool right there, it's good for Z-Man Elastec baits, but it's really a unique tool to hide a lot of stuff into your baits whenever you're trying to sink something down. So Nico rig, nail weight, spotted bass, can't stand that presentation. Throw it out at them, especially when they're starting to move shallow, thinking about moving up, and they're in little pods or big ones. That's a good bait to throw. Next up, chatterbait. Okay, anytime you're fishing down south in the spring, you gotta expect rain. It could be super clear, water could be low, or it could be chocolate milk and up into the pine trees. You just never know, and it happens fast. Just coming home from Lake Lanier, I drove over Kentucky Lake. It was chocolate milk, or maybe that was Barkley I was looking at, the same thing. And water all the way up into the trees and all that. They had a ton of rain, a lot of flooding there. So I'm kind of expecting dirty water. At the same time, I'm watching it and I see it's coming back down, so maybe it'll be a clear deal and we'll be out looking at them. Who knows? Either way, I like this on dirty water, something big and bright. This is the new Z-Man Evo Tungsten. I know a lot of guys will be throwing chatterbaits. I like this tungsten head. I've been throwing it more and more. I like the feel that I get from it. It has a little bit different sound, vibration underneath the water, a little bit tighter even. And this big, bright chartreuse sucker. I love the colors that they got on these new Evos, whether you're throwing the Z-Man Evo Tungsten or the Evo, the standard Evo. They're both awesome, but this tungsten right here is just a unique one to throw. I'm throwing it on the new G Loomis GLX 873 BJR bladed jig rod. Falling in love with this rod quick. I say this every time. I do use the NRX Plus, open water, lighter stuff, sometimes smallmouth. But in the past, if you've watched this over the last 5 years, you know that I've played with a lot of the Shimano fiberglass rods for chatterbaiting, because around grass and just shallow around big fish, I just liked it better. Loomis knocked it out of the park on this one. I can keep the fiberglass in my hand, but still have that same parabolic bend that I'm going to get. And it's just how they put the rod together is perfect. I don't know how it just springs off the grass with ease. It's more of a feel than a rip, and it just comes off and those fish just load up. It's awesome. I'm using a Shimano Metanium HG and straight 18-pound Shimano Mastiff fluorocarbon. Oh, and on the back of this, we got a chatter shad. This is the Z-Man chatter shads. Always been a big fan of their trailers for chatterbaits, and they just dropped this one in the chatter spike. I just thought it fit so good. So that's the chatterbait. If I get there, maybe the water's a little clearer or they're around wood or something, I'll probably just put a little 1/2 ounce, 3/8 ounce spinnerbait right on the same exact setup and go to town. So spring, keep that in mind. This is a very versatile rod. Matter of fact, I have another one with a 1/4 ounce or 3/8 ounce swim jig on it in here that's just doesn't happen to be out on my deck. You can't do pre-spawn without a jig. In this case, I'm throwing an Outcast tackle. This is Fighter's jig, the Stealth Fighter. Good jig, awesome jig. He designed it, that's why. Use it a bunch. This is the 1/2 ounce black and blue. This trailer's just like an old school Zoom chunk. I don't even know what it is, but I've always liked it. 1/2 ounce, pretty good for this time of year. I'm running this on a G Loomis NRX Plus 853C jig worm rod. That's a 7-1, extra fast, medium heavy. I'm gonna be pitching this to wood. I'm gonna be skipping this thing under docks. I'm gonna be throwing it at fish I see on my forward sonar, laydowns, stumps, you name it. Jigs are gonna get bit this time of year. I'm running a Shimano Metanium XG. Again, like I said, I'm pitching, I'm using the rod to impart the action, so I'm gonna use that fast gear ratio to get them in the boat. I'm running 40-pound Power Pro SSV2 and chartreuse, and then I'm running an 18-pound Shimano Mastiff fluorocarbon leader, utilizing that FG knot. This is something I keep doing more and more and more, and I just won't ever go away from it anymore. Braid fluorocarbon leader is the absolute bee's knees, and I can use that medium heavy rod, keep them pinned up, get them in the boat, ultimate feel. Gotta have the jig. What's next? 2 more. The Ned rig. Well, I can't say that I threw a Ned rig too much at Florida or Rayburn, but I will say that I threw it a lot on Lake Lanier. Ned rigs are just something that I catch bass on. I do use a shaky head some if I feel like I can't, if I feel like I need that Texas rig snagless presentation. Otherwise, I like the Z-Man and I like the head that I designed. Basically, we're using, this is an Outcast tackle, perfect Ned head. I designed this bait back, in 2018 or something like that. I'm actually not with Outcast Tackle anymore at all. Good people, they just new ownership, went their different ways. But at the same time, at the time, this was the best Ned rig that I knew about. And the head design's right. It has a Gamakatsu hook. Not sure what changes may or may not be being made to this, so just definitely check that out. But God knows I got a nice sized bag left in that I'll be using up until I find a better one. I'm using, this is the Game Changer color, which is one of my favorite colors. This is the Z-Man Big TRD. I did probably lop off about 1 inch off the top. I think I'm using this a 3/16. The fish were kind of deep, and then I started ignoring the deeper ones that are tougher to catch, and there was definitely fish staging. They had like a week of 80 degrees, 75 degrees before that, and that pushed fish like out of 30, 40, 50 up into like 15, 20, 10, and the Ned rig definitely cleaned them up. Using my favorite rod, the G Loomis NRX Plus 872S jig worm rod. Why wouldn't I? It's hard to get through one of these without me talking about one of these. Shimano Accents 4000, 10-pound Power Pro SSV2 to a 10-pound Shimano Mastiff fluorocarbon leader. And that is the last of the spinnies. Last one. It's cranking season. I'm headed down to Kentucky. Didn't do a ton of cranking at Sam Rayburn, definitely not in Florida, but I'm expecting it down on the Tennessee River, and this is one that I'll definitely be throwing. This is the Bass Mafia and Phil Hunt. They went together and made this. This is a balsa bait. It's a collaboration. Not even entirely sure how you get them. Maybe Bass Mafia's website, perhaps some dealers have them. Big fan of balsa, especially in the spring, working it through wood and all that. If things are still flooded, I'm a balsa guy. I just really like a balsa plug. I'm throwing this on a G Loomis IMX Pro 847 CCBR crankbait rod. That's a mod fast, but it's like a heavy. It's a 7-power, but it's a crankbait 7-power. So keep that in mind, that it's not anything more than like a 7 medium heavy. Just got that really nice bend, parabolic bend for throwing and casting crankbaits accurately. It's a 7-foot rod. I'm throwing it on a Shimano Bantam. This is a 6-speed Bantam. Again, now I'm not using the rod. I'm using the reel to impart the action, and I like to have that. And then I'm throwing it on 14-pound Shimano Mastiff fluorocarbon line. And that's it. We're through it. That's 9 of them. That was February. I want to thank everybody for coming on. I definitely want to thank everybody for following, subscribing, continue to come back, ask your questions below. honestly try to go through them all and answer as many as I possibly can. So if you have any questions about this, if there's stuff you want to know more about, maybe different presentations that I haven't been bringing up that you want me to throw in my What's on My Deck, do that. Remember to definitely, you can get most of all this type of stuff. We put all the links to Shields below, so you can find all this different stuff that I'm talking about using when I'm out on the water. Till the end of March, I'm excited for March. Spring's on its way. What's on my deck February? That's it. We'll see you next time. Tight lines.